Welcome to Investors Hangout once again. Every week we come to you to talk about something which is important. It affects your investments. Try and answer as many of your questions, and the whole idea is to help you understand investment issues better so that you can invest better. This is brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research. Today we are going to talk about the classification system specified by SEBI, the stock market regulator, which regulates mutual funds as well, has come up with a classification for open-end mutual funds for mutual fund companies to follow. Today it is possible to have any kind of mutual fund, open-end mutual fund as an investment option. SEBI has gone about defining that what are the various funds that mutual fund companies can offer, and if they already have too many of them, they have to clearly earmark which category it falls into, and they have to merge the funds. Either they have to merge the fund or reclassify them, change them, do whatever, come up with a plan, discuss it with SEBI, slot their various funds into the classification system which SEBI has specified, and need be merge those funds if they have too many funds falling in the same category. So how does it affect your investment? This is a anxiety which investors are faced with. Many investors have written to us asking what happens to their investment if they have invested in a large cap fund of one fund company, and that fund company has many large cap funds, and they see in the classification system. So let me just specify what SEBI has gone about doing. SEBI has said that mutual fund companies can have 10 kind of open-end mutual funds. This is first and foremost the multi-cap fund, then the large cap fund, large and mid-cap fund, mid-cap, small cap, dividend yield, or value or contra fund, one of these two. A focused fund, a fund which concentrates in a specific number of stocks or specific sector. Clearly defined thematic or a sectoral fund, and a ELSS. So these are 10 kind of funds which are possible. Of course, a fund company can have multiple sector funds, multiple thematic funds. Besides that, 16 kind of debt funds. So 16 kind of debt fund are far too many, but the advantage of this exercise is that you will clearly know what you are going to invest in. I would have liked, and of course, investors can ignore many of, if I look at these categories, these are overnight fund, liquid fund, ultra short-term bond fund, low duration fund, money market fund, short duration fund. So when I look at this complex classification even specified by SEBI, because most mutual fund companies actually follow some strategy like this or a specific focus with their debt fund. This might be useful for them. It will actually enhance the comparability of various funds. But most investors can do without this complex classification. The useful category from the debt fund is liquid fund or ultra short-term bond fund for your money of few days or few weeks. Maybe the short duration fund or the corporate bond fund to enhance your return, or maybe the dynamic bond fund, which has it is almost like the equivalent of a multi-cap fund of an equity fund. This is a fund which actually tries to derive the best return available from fixed income instruments without you bothering about where you want to be. You are delegating this responsibility to the mutual fund manager. So the 16 kind of debt fund, I don't want to list all of them, but 3, 4, 5 kind of fund, and they will be extremely comparable, because what SEBI has gone about doing is large cap should be invested where, mid cap should be invested where, multi cap should be invested in a certain proportion. So you will have absolute clarity in terms of what funds are doing, what they stand for, what they will do, and what they will not do. Another thing another category which has come is which got very clearly defined is the hybrid schemes. These are very useful funds for investors, because they give you wider diversification. They normally invest in equity and debt in certain combination, ranging from 10-15% going up to 65-70% for the balanced fund. They are also very tax efficient, because they are many of the hybrid funds, the balanced fund or the equity income funds, by their very design, they are able to provide you far greater tax efficiency despite having a meaningful fixed income allocation. So the fixed income allocation provides you the stability. But being a hybrid fund, because the law defines hybrid funds, any fund which invests over 65% into equity will be entitled for the equity tax treatment, which is which is concessional. Besides the convenience, you don't have to rebalance yourself. Most investors, conservative investors, should start with hybrid funds. They should invest in a fund, and they don't have to bother about rebalancing, because in a good market, equity goes up. If you realize your equity gains, you could be faced with one, you have to act, and then you have to worry about taxes. Here you don't have to worry about any of those. Besides this, you have a wide range of, every fund company can also offer a retirement fund and a children fund. Because I think, this was not needed, because any fund can be a children fund if you are thinking for if you are investing for a child. But many investors, it becomes easy to sell a fund for many naive or, uninitiated investor who will have this goal in mind, investing for retirement or investing for their child. Besides this, any fund company can offer as many index funds and ETFs and fund of fund offering foreign, investing in foreign markets. So these are far too many. But the key benefit of all this is about, you will have comparable funds. When you will be looking at a multi-cap fund, you know that all these funds are going to be multi-cap as defined by SEBI. If you are investing in a small cap fund, you will know that these funds are, the set of small cap funds are strictly comparable, because the moment a fund company slots its funds into that category, it has to adhere to the broad guideline specified, that what is small cap. So earlier there was inconsistency of definition of the various nomenclature followed by fund companies. Now there will be consistency and comparability. So this is one of the first advantage of this regulation. The other is that, it will affect some funds. Of course, it is still some time when fund companies have to get into a discussion with SEBI in terms of how they want to follow a roadmap. AMFI has come up with some clarification, has sought some clarification or suggested few changes. Let's see what happens. It is unlikely to be, unlikely to change any meaningfully from whatever has come in the notification so far. This will translate into, a situation where some fund companies will be faced with a situation that they will have to merge an existing fund with another. But it is unlikely to have a big difference. It is unlikely to have a big impact on investors, because our tax laws have been changed in the past, in recent past, whereby a fund merger will not, cause a tax incidence for you. Earlier it was not so. If two funds merged, so if your fund was actually merging into another, if a fund in which you have invested was merging into another fund, then it amounted to redemption of one fund and purchase of another fund, which meant that if you were faced with a short-term gain, if your investment in the older fund was less than 1 year old, you will be faced with a short-term capital gains liability. No longer. A fund merger will be considered as your initial date of purchase, will be considered as your date of purchase, and whenever you redeem your investments from the merged fund, it will be considered as your date of redemption. So, and if you cross 365 days, it will be applicable. There will also not be any, of course, there was also a securities transaction tax applied, which in many cases fund companies used to bear that cost. But securities transaction tax, even now, I think will be borne by the fund companies, and because this is a situation which is not, triggered by investor. So in fairness, it will be borne by fund companies will bear that. Besides that, it will the securities transaction tax has become very nominal for it to affect your returns. These fund mergers will translate into a situation that some of the big funds will get even bigger. So there could be some implication on the performance. I still worry about many funds becoming very big will be an impediment to their performance, or they will lose their flexibility. It will also be impacting the strategy followed. So we will see as and when it comes by. But first and foremost, there are not going to be too many fund mergers. At worst, I think 10% of the actively managed open-end funds, though there are too many funds, but all these rules applies only to the open-end fund. So it might have a bearing on many small funds, and which will get merged with the bigger ones, and one has to see that will it really impact some of the bigger funds. And we will keep you posted. We will be taking a view on these fund, the impact on investors those fund performance resulting from these fund mergers. How do these fund mergers happen? Effectively, it amounts to redemption of your fund at the then NAV on the date of merger, and purchase of the new fund. So you will become the owner of a new fund when these mergers happen, based on the comparable. So if you own a fund whose NAV is 20 rupees, and if you are going to have, and you have 100 units of those, so you have 2,000 rupees worth of investment in one fund, that is merging with another fund whose NAV is 40 rupees. So you will have half of those units, and the worth of your investments will remain the same on the day of the merger. So there will be a corresponding investment made, and it will almost be like selling a fund and buying a new one. What should investors do? For now, don't worry much, because not much to do, and we will see as and when it happens, and we'll keep you posted. So this is one big regulation that has come about. It is going to affect some funds, and don't get anxious about this. And most of the funds which will merge, they will be of similar kind. They will be managed by the same team. If it's an outstanding fund, we have to see that what is going to be the impact on some funds which are turning very big, and their strategy does not support or is not conducive to managing a very large fund. In many of the debt funds, it will benefit them, because some of the debt funds will actually merge, they will turn bigger, and it is a business of economies of scale. Many of the equity category will also benefit as a result of turning big. In my understanding, the large cap funds can actually derive the advantage of scale. Some of the expense ratio can also come down as a result of some these fund mergers. So net, the key benefit is it simplifies. You will have greater clarity in terms of which fund you are investing in, and some funds will have greater economies of scale. The negative of this, one thing, we still will have too many fund categories, but that, I guess, is a constraint which SEBI operated in.